Now, from CBS News Miami, this is Facing South Florida with Jim DeFede.
Welcome to Facing South Florida. I'm Jim DeFede. We are a little more than 24 hours away from Donald Trump being sworn in and completing one of the most remarkable and improbable political comebacks in American history. We'll talk to State Senator Joe Gruters, a close ally of President-elect Trump, to try and place this historic moment in context. But first, we have an exclusive interview with Broward State Representative Hillary Cassel, who made national headlines when she switched parties last month and became a Republican. Now, this was surprising because she had always campaigned against what she described as the Republicans' extreme agenda, even telling the Sun-Sentinel her and her fellow Democrats are always on the right side of issues. As you can imagine, Cassel has faced withering criticism from Democrats, especially about the timing of her party switch. She waited until after she was elected in a safe Democratic seat in November to make the jump to the Republican Party. Congresswoman Debbie Wasserman Schultz said Cassel deceived voters by faking a commitment to fight the GOP's radical agenda. Her interest is power, not people. Now, on her way out the door, Cassel smeared Democrats over what she described as their willingness to justify or condone acts of terrorism against Israel. And she said the Democratic Party no longer shares her values. State Senator Tina Polsky blasted Cassel's claims of anti-Semitism, saying, "As a Jewish woman myself, I was honestly offended by her using that as a crutch to leave the Democratic Party." Of course, it hasn't all been criticism. Cassel received a congratulatory post from Donald Trump, welcoming her to the Republican Party and helping him on his quest to make America great again. Since making the switch, she has refused to answer questions from reporters. That changed on Thursday when we sat down for an interview. I started with the most basic question of all. Why did she switch parties?
At the end of the day, this really was a slow burning process for me. I'm a really thoughtful person. I take time to make decisions, especially this large. And for me, the debate about Israel really lit that first fuse. And there were moments from that time forward that just continued to, set me apart and set me aside a little bit from staying connected to the Democratic Party. So it was not that singular moment, but it was definitely the moment for me that lit the fuse of saying, is this really where my alignment is? Is this really where I can be the most effective for my constituents and for my district? The decision was made really December 26th. It wasn't something that was made over the summer and giving voters an opportunity to make a different decision. This wasn't a decision, until you hit send on that notice, that's when that decision is really made.
Okay, I want to sort of walk back through all of that because, when you appeared on Fox News shortly after making the change, and you were asked what specific moment caused you to change parties, and you, again, referring to this time in the legislature, November 7th, 2023, it was a month after the Hamas invasion into Israel, and there was a resolution sponsored by one of your then fellow Democrats, Angie Nixon, calling for a ceasefire. And you were one of the people who spoke along with Representative Gottlieb, and you said, "It was a moment that will live with me forever. I was forced to debate a Democratic colleague who filed a resolution while we still have hostages there. I was told I should have sat down and stayed quiet. I was told I should sit down and stay quiet." Who told you to sit down and stay quiet?
I don't think names are relevant. I don't think that is something that I need to call that individual colleague out for. But after that debate, before I even left the floor of the House, a colleague approached me and said that I would have preferred that you sat down and stayed quiet than engage in that debate. And as I said in the Fox News interview, because I was asked to provide one example, one moment, and I said specifically in the Fox interview that was a moment of disconnect for me, where for the first time I felt disconnected from a party that I was aligned with, that I had was participating participating in, that I was an advocate for. And it was that in that moment where, shockingly, I had to take a breath and take a step back and say, wait a second, here's where that disconnect starts. It wasn't in that moment that I thought I would be leaving the party, but it was in that moment where I felt that first disconnect from the alignment with the party, and then that continued throughout the remainder of the year.
You wrote in your statement, as a proud Jewish woman, I've been increasingly troubled by the Democratic Party's failure to unequivocally support Israel and its willingness to tolerate extreme progressive voices that justify or condone acts of terrorism. So do you believe the Democratic Party is anti-Semitic?
I do not believe the Democratic Party is anti-Semitic. What I believe is the Democratic Party has allowed the progressive, loud voice of the party to overtake its narrative. And I think they've allowed that in many various aspects of the party, not just with regards to Israel, but on many other issues. We have gone from really trying to serve the people of this country and serving the people of Florida, and really constantly advocating only for what appears to be the smallest of the smallest of the smallest minute issues, instead of focusing on solving really complicated problems. So I don't believe the party as a whole is anti-Semitic. I do believe that there is a segment of the population that has elected to stand by terrorism. And I think that is where I grew frustrated with the lack of immediate pushback. There should have been immediate pushback from allowing that conversation to continue to grow and permeate this country.
If that was such a troubling a moment, and you had then all of November, December, January, all of February, all of March, all of April, all of May to ruminate on this, why didn't you, before the June filing deadline in 2024, change parties then and allow the voters, make your case to voters that there is this disconnect in the Democratic Party, that you would run as a Republican?
Because I hadn't made that decision at that time. There were things that occurred post-election that added to my reasons as to why I was disconnected and didn't want to continue to be a Democrat. I hadn't made that choice at that time. And I have placed myself on the ballot again in 2026 as a Republican, and the voters will have that opportunity. But the voters are still going to have the same representative that they had, December 26th before the announcement and December 27th. I am an advocate. I look to good policy. I look to collaborate with my colleagues. I look to be a problem solver, so I can be effective for my district, because I was not sent here to be opposition for opposition's sake. I was sent here to be empowered, as Speaker Perez mentioned to us during organizational session. That was his goal, that he wanted to empower his members to be effective, and that's who I want to work for. Somebody who wants to empower members versus a side that wants to be opposition for opposition's sake.
Sure. You said that there were incidents that occurred after your election in November. What were those incidents that led you to then, a few weeks later, change parties? What was it, like 6 weeks after the election, you switched parties?
So after the election, obviously, whenever you're in an elected position, you have opportunities to speak with leadership about things that went wrong. And what I've noticed in the Democratic Party is there is a lack of self-reflection. There is a lack of willingness to say that we have real problems, and we have a communication problem, we have a connection problem. And as I engaged in those conversations with current leadership, I continued to see this lack of willingness to acknowledge that we have problems with our messaging, we have problems with the issues that we take on, and it's not resonating with Floridians, and it's not resonating with Americans. So to be a part of a party that did not seem that they were interested in changing, I no longer wanted to participate in that. We have to evolve, we have to have self-reflection, and when you're unwilling to take responsibility for why you've lost. I'm a trial lawyer. I present cases in front of juries. If a jury doesn't side with me, I don't blame them. I don't blame the voters for not picking me. I look at myself, I look at the presentation, I look at the disconnect with the jury and with the people, and I make changes. And I wasn't seeing that or hearing that in the conversations post-election as to what the vision of the future of the Democratic Party was going to be and how we were going to begin to start connecting with the people. In
Sure.
fact,
In your
it
statement,
was the exact opposite.
in your statement, you said, I'm constantly troubled by the inability of the current Democratic Party to relate to everyday Floridians. I can no longer remain in a party that doesn't represent my values. And I guess so in the decision to join the Republican Party, you believe the Republican Party aligns closer with your values? Is that a fair statement then?
I think the Republican right now is the party that is aligning with the American people and with Floridians. And I know for a fact that I will not agree with my colleagues on every issue.
Well, let me ask you about a few of them.
Well,
Do
and
you
if I could,
agree
Mr.
with- do you agree
DeFede,
with the-
Mr.
do you agree
DeFede,
with-
we've hit our
do you-
10 minutes. So I
Do
just
you
want to,
agree? Do you agree with the Republican Party on the abortion ban, the 6-week abortion ban?
absolutely not. And my voting record will stay clear. My voting record is clear on that. Will always be a person, a woman who absolutely supports a woman's right to access to health
Gay
care.
rights?
It will always
Will
be a
you-
pro-choice.
What about gay rights?
So we've reached our 10 minutes.
So you don't want to talk about whether or not you continue to support gay rights?
Jim, I have a clear voting record on what my
But
issues
that's-
are and where I
but
stand.
Isn't that the point? Your voting record, on worker rights, on defense of unions, on guns, you voted against the doing away with permits for concealed weapons. I'm trying to understand how, given all of these issues that you apparently still agree with, you would then join the Republican Party. Did you even consider, for instance, just becoming an independent? Because it doesn't seem like you agree with the Republicans on any of those major issues, whether it's guns, LGBT rights, women's right to choose, worker rights, union rights, all of those issues that you talked about in 2022 when you ran as being the core values of the Democratic Party that you believe in. Why would you switch to a party that doesn't have any of those as their fundamental belief?
Well, what I think I've seen from the Republican Party is that they are open to the big tent, whereas that used to be the Democrats' motto. And the big tent is going to allow somebody like me to stand with my principles and have an opportunity to represent my district under a speaker who wants to empower his members to solve problems. And for me, the number one problem facing Floridians is property insurance, which I'm an expert on, and I now serve as the vice chair, to have that opportunity to have those conversations on actual issues that impact everyday Floridians. Those are the issues that people care about. The issues that people care about are the ones that impact their pocketbooks, that help them ensure that they can put food on the table and that they can have quality of life and live the American dream. And I'm excited for the opportunity.
They don't care about those other issues, whether it's guns or gay rights or worker rights or union rights?
Mr. DeFede, my voting record stands, and I look forward to the opportunity to proving to my district the issues that still matter to me, and that I can operate as a Republican in this caucus and be an independent thinker and do what's right for my district and bring home resources home to my district and be an effective leader, rather than coming home every 2 years and saying, well, I tried, couldn't get anything accomplished. I have every intention of working on the number one issue that faces Floridians across the state, which is our property insurance crisis, which affects affordable housing, issues that matter to them. That's what I'm here to do. I'm here to solve those problems and work on those issues. So thank you for your time.
I'm still not sure we know why she switched parties. Was it about Israel? Was it because she now aligns with the Republican values, which she used to call extreme? Based on her answers, it doesn't seem so. Or was it because there were some personal conflicts with some of the members of the Democratic caucus? We'll certainly be watching closely in the months ahead. But up next, we talk to Republican State Senator Joe Gruters about the Trump inauguration. Stay with us. Welcome back. Donald Trump will be sworn in tomorrow. The event has been moved indoors because of the extreme cold weather. Now, in advance of the inauguration, I spoke to Republican State Senator Joe Gruters. I started by asking for his reaction to Governor Ron DeSantis' picking of Florida Attorney General Ashley Moody to replace Marco Rubio in the United States Senate.
Well, I think Governor DeSantis made a great pick with Ashley Moody. She's battle tested. She's done a great job as a conservative attorney general for the state of Florida. And I think she's ready to go and to do battle on behalf of the state of Florida and to push President Trump's agenda. Because at the end of the day, the most important thing that the president needs right now are super strong allies in the United States Senate. And she certainly said that she was going to do that from day one, and she's going to go up there and do the best job that she can. And so I think it was a good pick by the governor.
It certainly is a good week if to be a Florida Attorney General or a former Florida Attorney General. The last two Attorney Generals, one is on its way now to becoming United States Senator. The other is on its way to becoming the U.S. Attorney General. So that seems to be the new power position to be jumping off from.
Well, make no mistake, both Pam Bondi and Ashley Moody are probably the two highest vote getters over the last 20 years here in the state of Florida. Both extremely popular. They're actually, I think they've known each other for quite some time. And so it's, I think that they'll work well together up in D.C., like I said, going to battle on behalf of the president to make sure his agenda gets passed.
All right. I want to talk about the inauguration. Obviously, that you're in D.C. right now. That is the lovely backdrop of a classic D.C. hotel that you're coming to us from. But before we get to that, I did want to talk a little bit about the notion of a special session. There seems to be some back and forth that's been going on. The governor announced that he wanted to have a special session. The Senate President, Ben Albritton, and the House Speaker, Danny Perez, seemed to push back pretty hard, saying it was premature and possibly irresponsible to hold a special session before the president is actually sworn in and we get a clear idea of his agenda. The governor then pushed back again and seems to continue to want to push for it. Let's start with the basics. Do you believe you need a special session since the legislature is going to come into existence in March anyway?
Well, I think when you look at it from 30,000 feet above, I think that, and you see everything that's happening with this, I think the president needs as much support and help at the state level across the country. Of course, he has support from Florida. Of course, he has support from both the governor on this issue and the Speaker of the House, Danny Perez, and the Senate President, Ben Albritton. The question is can Florida be the model that other states can follow? And I think that you saw a reaction from the leadership of the legislative bodies that basically pushed back. It wasn't a pushback on the policies. It was a pushback because they weren't informed about the special session until a couple of minutes prior to, and there was no outline of specific policies that the governor wanted to see. And listen, when you have 160 members of the Florida legislature, 120 in the House, 40 in the Senate, but you have one presiding officer of the House, one presiding officer in the Senate, and the governor. All three of those people basically have to agree on some type of language that they want to see get passed. And the easiest way to do it is to build a bridge and to make sure you build consensus heading into anything like this. And that's what I would suggest. And I think that's why you got the pushback initially that you did. Again, has nothing to do with policy, because I know Speaker Perez and Ben Albritton are both strong supporters of President Trump, specifically on this immigration stuff. And they want to do everything they can to help the president out. And I think if maybe there was some better communication on the front end, we could have avoided some of this public battle that you're seeing right now. I think it's just disappointing and unneeded.
Well, this has been interpreted widely, and I certainly see it through the prism of for the first 6 years of the DeSantis administration, the legislature really played sort of a second fiddle role. It was the governor saying jump and the legislators basically saying how high. And this seemed to almost be the first recognition that the legislature, both the House and the Senate, are an equal branch of government to the executive. And I think my interpretation was that that's what Ben Albritton and Danny Perez were trying to articulate, is that they are an equal part of the institution, and that they can't just be told by the governor and ordered by the governor to do certain things. Give me your perspective.
No, I agree completely. But in 6 months from now, I think we could look back at this moment and say, if we had better communication between the three of them, we never would have had this. Never would have happened, because everybody at the end of the day is going to be on the same side on this issue. Everybody agrees we want to help President Trump. The question is timing. The question is how do we make sure that it happens in the right way? And you got to give the legislative leadership so they can give their bodies the information they need of what they're actually going to pass.
I want to now get to the reason I actually initially invited you, which was to talk about the inauguration of Donald Trump. You're there for that. Obviously, Florida has a huge contingent there up in D.C. right now. I want you to just sort of let's try to get that 30,000-foot view that we often talk about. What is the significance of Donald Trump walking back into the White House, of taking the oath of office on Monday at noon? Tell me what this moment means in American history that we'll look back on it as.
Well, listen, we could celebrate. I think the country's going to celebrate. I think obviously our party's going to celebrate. I think we can celebrate the faith in this country. Listen, I think it's a miracle that President Trump's going to be sworn in on Monday. Listen, remember in Butler, he was almost killed. He was a millimeter away from having his head blown off. And it's by the grace of God that he survived that assassination attempt, and he's going to be sworn in tomorrow.
Well, let's go back to the monumental nature of it, though. Talk a little bit more, if you can, just about what this moment means. Obviously, you talked about it being a miracle that he survived the attempt on his life, and then now being sworn in. What does this say where the country is today? Give me your perspective on Trump's election and now his return to the White House.
Well, listen, President Trump won all 7 battleground states, but this country is still split. You know, it's the House is split almost 50-50. The U.S. Senate is split almost 50-50. But I think President Trump was able to get reelected as a result of his appeal to the working class American and his ability to make things happen and get things done. And I think that's what you've already started seeing before, you know, with the Israeli Hamas peace deal negotiations. He is going to continue to push the limit on what things can happen to make sure that our country is in the best possible shape that it's ever been. And listen, I think it's monumental from the standpoint of he was the 45th president of the United States. We didn't have the House, we didn't have the Senate when he lost his reelection. And at the end of the day, now he's being sworn in with the Republican House, with the Republican Senate. He has the ability to move his agenda forward. And I think he's a lot better prepared for what it takes to be successful in this position. And so I think he is going to absolutely be the greatest president of all time. You know, I've talked to him. He is very excited. He truly believes deep down, and I wish everybody got to see the side of him that some people get to see, and that's of a genuinely concerned for the well-being of others individual who loves his country and who wants to make sure that he does everything he possibly can to be a great president.
We'll be right back after the break. A quick programming note, CBS News Miami's Lauren Pastrana is in Washington to cover the inauguration. Look for Lauren's live reports later today and tomorrow. It should be fun. I just hope she dresses warmly. Layers, that's the key, layers. Well, that's all the time we have today. If you have any thoughts or comments, feel free to contact me at jdefede@cbs.com. I do enjoy hearing from you. Thanks again for watching and enjoy the rest of your day.